The tallest building in all of Europe is not in London. It's not in Frankfurt or Paris or Moscow. It stands 462 meters over a frozen stretch of coastline on the Gulf of Finland, 12 kilometers outside the center of St. Petersburg, in what is essentially the middle of nowhere. This is the Lakhta Center, the northernmost skyscraper on the planet, taller than the Empire State Building, more than 3 times the height of anything else in its own city, and the headquarters of one of the most powerful companies on Earth, the Russian gas giant Gazprom. It holds a Guinness World Record for the single largest continuous concrete pour in history, more than was needed under the Burj Khalifa. It is wrapped in more curved glass than any building ever constructed. And it sits, gleaming and alone, surrounded by almost nothing, miles from the city it was supposed to crown. So why would anyone spend over $1.5 billion building the tallest tower in Europe out in the marshland where almost no one can stand beneath it? The answer is not an accident. This building was banished there. To understand why, you have to go back to a fight over the most beautiful skyline in Russia. This is the Lakhta Center in the Primorsky district on the edge of St. Petersburg. 462 meters, 87 floors of usable space, completed in 2019. From a distance, it looks like a ship setting sail into the Gulf, or, fittingly, like a flame, given who paid for it. Because to understand this building, you first have to understand that it was never really meant to stand where it stands. Rewind to 2004. Gazprom, the state-controlled energy behemoth, the single biggest company in Russia, with deep ties to the Kremlin and a CEO close to the president, wanted a new headquarters in St. Petersburg, the president's home city. And not just any headquarters. They bought a plot of land in the historic heart of the city on the bank of the Neva River and announced a tower originally called the Lakhta Center. The British firm RMJM, with architect Tony Kettle leading the design, won the competition in 2006. The plan was for a glass spike of around 400 meters, rising right in the middle of one of the most protected skylines on the planet. And that is where it all went wrong, because St. Petersburg is not an ordinary city. Founded by Peter the Great in 1703, its historic center is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and for 3 centuries an unwritten rule held that nothing downtown should rise higher than the Winter Palace, except churches. A 400-meter glass tower in that skyline was not progress. To a huge share of the city, it was vandalism. The backlash was ferocious. UNESCO warned that the tower could endanger the city's World Heritage status. The director of the Hermitage Museum and Russia's own Minister of Culture spoke out against it. The Union of Architects of Russia boycotted the design competition entirely, leaving only foreign firms to enter, and 3/4 of the judging panel reportedly quit in protest. Thousands of people marched through the streets carrying signs that read "No to the tower" and "History is more important than money," demanding the president himself step in and stop it. When the city governor approved the project anyway, protesters called for her to be fired, and eventually the pressure won. In December 2010, the plan to build in the historic center was abandoned. Gazprom did not get to plant its tower in the heart of St. Petersburg. Instead, the entire project was relocated 12 kilometers out to the Lakhta district, a reclaimed brownfield site partly built on land that used to store industrial sand out beyond the preservation zone on the edge of the Gulf. That is the real answer to why the tallest building in Europe sits in the middle of nowhere. It was not a master plan. It was a compromise, a banishment. The city would not let the symbol stand where everyone could see it, so it got pushed to the horizon, where it could be enormous without being in anyone's way. If a billion-dollar skyscraper getting exiled to the outskirts of its own city is the kind of story you came here for, do me a favor and hit subscribe. This channel digs into the buildings where the real story is the fight nobody filmed, and there are a lot of them. And while you're here, drop a comment. If you lived in a 300-year-old city with a protected skyline, would you have fought the tower or welcomed it? I genuinely want to see how this room splits. Now back to the story, because once they had their site, Gazprom built something that, whatever you think of why it exists, is a genuine engineering marvel. The Lakhta Center is not a simple glass box. The whole tower twists. Its form is inspired by the footprint of an old fortress that once stood in the area, and that shape is rotated a full 90 degrees as it climbs from the base to the tip of the spire. That means no two floors are exactly alike. Every single level is slightly rotated from the one beneath it, which made construction a nightmare of custom geometry. The building is actually at its widest about a third of the way up, around level 17, where it bulges more than 2 meters beyond its own base. But that twist is not just for looks. At this height, wind is the enemy. A straight, rectangular tower this tall would get shoved around in a storm like a flagpole. The spiraling form scatters the wind, breaking up the forces that try to make a super tall sway, and it works so well that the Lakhta Center does not need the giant tuned mass damper that towers like Taipei 101 rely on. The shape itself is the stabilizer. Then there is the sheer scale of the build. To create the foundation, engineers ran the largest continuous concrete pour ever recorded, roughly 20,000 cubic meters of concrete placed without stopping over about 49 hours, beating the record set under the Burj Khalifa and earning a Guinness World Record. The facade holds more than 16,500 curved glass panes, the largest volume of glass ever used in a high-rise. Inside, there is not just offices, but a sports center, shops, restaurants, and a planetarium. And being the northernmost skyscraper on the planet creates a problem most towers never face: ice. The very top of the spire is an open mesh, which lets wind pass through and helps with stability, but it also means ice can build up there and, in theory, fall 460 meters onto the streets below. So the engineers built special ice catching frames, tested them rigorously, and in a genuinely clever touch, some of the collected ice is actually reused to help cool the building's air conditioning. It is, by any measure, a serious technical achievement, which makes the next part of the story all the more pointed. Because of those 462 meters, the top 117 of them are essentially useless. That upper section is just spire. No floors, no offices, no purpose other than to push the number higher. Engineers have a name for this: vanity-height. It is the part of a skyscraper that exists purely so the building can claim a bigger title. And the Lakhta Center carries a lot of it. Well over 100 meters of pure altitude added so that Gazprom's tower would not just dominate St. Petersburg, but top the entire continent. The engineering was real, but a meaningful chunk of the height was never about function. It was about being able to say one thing: tallest in Europe. If you appreciate the channel pointing out which parts of these record breakers are real and which parts are just expensive bragging rights, subscribe so the next one finds you. And here is the question I want in the comments this time: is vanity height a harmless bit of ambition, or is spending fortunes on an empty spire just to win a title something we should be calling out? Make your case below. The sharpest arguments tend to shape what file we open next. Now back to the story, because the most revealing chapter is not how the tower was built. It is what has happened to the company inside it. The Lakhta Center was meant to be the anchor of a brand new modern district, a sleek financial quarter rising away from the old imperial city. There were plans for more towers. A second skyscraper, Lakhta Center 2, was designed to reach a staggering 703 meters, which would make it the second tallest building in the world, behind only the Burj Khalifa, with the highest occupied floor anywhere on Earth, and even a third tower beyond that. A whole cluster of super talls on the edge of the Gulf, with Gazprom's flame at the center. Then, reality arrived. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022 triggered waves of international sanctions, and much of the world simply stopped doing business with Russian companies. Gazprom, for years a fountain of revenue for the Russian state, was hit brutally. The company that once supplied a huge share of Europe's natural gas watched that market slam shut. By 2023, Gazprom reported its first annual loss in decades. Reporting in 2025 described the company swinging to a loss in the billions of dollars, selling off luxury properties and hotels to shore up its balance sheet, and reportedly weighing cuts to a large share of its headquarters staff, the very people meant to fill that tower on the Gulf. So here is the situation the Lakhta Center finds itself in. The tallest building in Europe, built as a monument to the wealth and reach of a company that is now, by its own reported figures, hemorrhaging money. The grand district that was supposed to grow up around it may never fully materialize. And those two even taller towers, the 703-meter giant and its companion, look increasingly like beautiful renderings that the current Gazprom may simply never be able to afford to build. And both things are true about the Lakhta Center. It is a genuine triumph of engineering, a twisting, ice-defying, record-setting super tall that solved problems most buildings never have to face, the tallest tower on the continent, raised in one of the harshest building climates on the planet. And it is also one of the purest monuments to vanity in modern construction. A tower banished to the marshland because its own city would not have it downtown, topped with over 100 meters of empty spire whose only job is to win a title, built to glorify a company that has since been brought low by the very ambitions of the state it serves. The tallest building in Europe, standing nearly alone on the edge of the Gulf. A historic city that fought it off its own skyline and won. A twisting tower so cleverly shaped it tames the wind without a damper, wearing a crown of more than 100 meters of nothing. A Guinness record poured in 49 hours under a building meant to last centuries. And a gas giant that built a 462-meter flame to announce its permanence right before the ground shifted under it. The Lakhta Center was designed to be seen from everywhere, and to say one thing, that this company and the power behind it would tower over Europe forever. What it actually proves is something its builders never intended, that you can win the race to the tallest skyline on the continent and still end up standing alone, far from the city, watching the empire that raised you start to recede. Somewhere right now, another state-backed giant is sketching another record-breaking tower into another skyline, certain its moment will last. Because the question hiding underneath the Lakhta Center is the one every monument eventually has to answer. What good is building the tallest tower in the world if you have to put it where almost no one can stand beneath it, and the power it was built to celebrate is already fading?